And we're live. What is going on, Spurs fans? It's Ethan Quintero doing a solo SSPN edition. Jude has to work tonight, but he is in the comments before his shift starts, so shout out to him for being not only the best host, but also the number one fan of SSPN, getting in a comment before I have to do my real job. Laughing emoji. Y'all have a great stream, and go Spurs, go saluting emoji. So, Jude, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate everyone being here as always. If you're new to the show, welcome. And if you're a long-time listener, we appreciate you coming back as always. So, today, we're just going to break down and do a little preview of tonight's matchup for the Spurs. We have Denver, the reigning champions, in Denver tonight. Both teams are 3-2 in the last 5 games. Denver coming off of 2 wins, one handedly over Memphis, and a close one against Portland. Um, oh, no, excuse me, I'm reading that wrong. Coming off of a blowout win over Cleveland, actually, and then a pretty handed loss against Minnesota back on 3/29. Spurs coming off of the loss against Golden State, where we lost by 4. In really a pretty decent game. It was a nail biter. I caught some of the highlights and some of the recap as well from Mr. Jude McLaren, or excuse me, the pregame from Jude McLaren. So what can be expected from tonight? Well, not much, I would say. The Spurs are down 4 players, unless there is a breaking news that I did not see. But Devin Vassell and Jeremy Sohan are out for the rest of the year. They have been shut down. Keldon Johnson is out tonight. And then Dominic Barlow is also apparently out tonight, according to the injury report on ESPN. Not sure as to the reasoning behind both of those outs. I think Keldon's kind of been battling a couple of things, but I will definitely be on Twitter later to try and find out the specifics. And if you're in the comment section now, if you want to do me a favor and look up those specifics and put them in the comments, we would appreciate that. But Devin and Jeremy being shut down for the rest of the season kind of goes hand in hand with a theme that Jude and I have been discussing the past couple of weeks, which is that the Spurs are pretty good at sort of kind of under the table, wink, wink, tanking. We won 3 of our last 5 games, and the Spurs are like, nah, let's shut it down. Jeremy, you're done. Devin, you're the Robin to Wemby, so you're also done. It's gonna make it really difficult for us to win any of the remaining games with those 2 guys out. Devin Vassell being the Robin to Wemby's Batman, like I said, really elevating his role as a scorer. And then Jeremy Sohan, what he brings to the table defensively, as well as a Swiss Army knife. And really, he started to unlock a lot of offensive game as well. It's a shame that we won't get to see them finish off the year, but I understand it. I think we're like a game behind dropping out of the top 3 lottery odds for that number 1 pick. So it makes sense for the Spurs to shut them down going forward. Honestly, with them playing, beating Denver is going to be difficult, but without them, it's going to be basically impossible. Jamal Murray, however, is out for Denver, and Aaron Gordon and Jokic are game to game, or a game time decision, excuse me. So if neither of them play, it will at least be competitive. However, I would still be putting the Spurs with an L, only because the Denver Nuggets still have a lot of veteran presence without those 3 guys. There is a cohesion to that team, a championship DNA that you just can't put on the stat sheet. So, with all that being said, I still have them coming out on top. But there is always the Victor Wembanyama factor. Uh, will he be able to have a breakout game? Because in that first game against the Nuggets early in the year, I think it was in November, he had a decent game, but the rest of the team did not, and Denver ended up winning pretty handedly. I think the final score, I have it here, was 132 to 120. And then the last game, just a couple of weeks ago, we got smacked in the mouth, and we're actually able to make it a pretty competitive game in the second half, but ultimately lost 117 to 106. So it's going to take a valiant effort from the rest of the team without Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, and Keldon Johnson. Really, the 3 guys after Wembanyama that the Spurs have leaned on all year. So we're going to have to lean on guys like Trey Jones. I'm blanking on on the rest of our team. That's how rough it is with those 3 guys out that I can't even remember who else is on the team that could possibly get us some buckets. Chetty Osman, Malachi Branham's going to have a big game. I think in the last game he only had like 2 points, so we're going to need him to be impressive. I think he'll probably get the start with Devin Vassell out. Chetty Osman likely as well. Sandro had a great game the other night, so hopefully that can continue for him. He's always just in the right place at the right time, so it would be such a Mamu move for him to kind of have an incredible game against the Nuggets. And I think, was it last March, when he had the unbelievable game where he ended up winning against the Nuggets and kind of single handedly uh, initiating that comeback in the fourth quarter. I think Jude was actually present in that game, so maybe we can have a glimpse of that type of night from him. But ultimately, like I started the recap or the preview with, I'm gonna go out on a limb and call a Denver Nuggets win in Denver tonight. But we will still get to see some potential sightings of some of our young players, including a guy that a lot of the people in the comments have been clamoring for, CD Sissoko, who I believe is also active with the team tonight. It is his birth. Oh, what am I saying? Isn't he? Wait, time out. Before I go off and ramble some more, let me back up here. No, okay, yeah, no, he is active, I believe. So it is also his birthday tonight. So happy birthday to CD Sissoko, one of our very talented rookies from France. Hopefully, we get to see some meaningful minutes from him. He's been really tearing it up in Austin as of late. If you're a listener, a regular listener of the show, you know Jude is always keeping up with the Austin Spurs. I think in the last like 10 games or so, he's averaging like 20 points a game on pretty efficient shooting. And he's just an athletic presence that runs the floor and can provide some pretty stand-up defense as well. So with Keldon Johnson out as well and Jeremy Sohan, maybe we'll see a sighting for CD Sissoko. As Victor Wembanyama says, hopefully we will see CD Sissoko tonight. That would definitely make it a little bit more watchable for us fans that are looking for a glimpse of hope in what is likely to be another Spurs loss. Let's see what else is going on in the comment section here. EM Dolphin fan, Spurs up, I would agree, especially with our lottery odds being top 3 moving into the offseason, and a whole bunch of rumors about what we might do. Little moves or big moves, not entirely sure. The rumor mill is definitely rampant. I think those of you that are fans of Brian Windhorst and his Hoop Collective podcast, they had a pretty interesting topic today. Go listen to them. Brian Windhorst seems to think that other players might be wanting to play with Victor Wembanyama. So go check that out. I'm sure SSPN will have some content about that as the season winds down and as we move into the offseason. Nick, you're always in here. Ethan Quintero, I'm hoping that was a mistake to include the P, but if it wasn't, that's okay. Ethan Quintero Poo will be my official name moving forward. Appreciate you being in here as always, my guy. Alejandro, you missed the what's up, everybody. I will hit it with you right now. What's up, everybody? Thank you for being here as well. Nick has a question. Which player/players would you like to see get more minutes with some of our key rotation guys out? I think CD Sissoko is the first name I would think of because he's someone that hasn't gotten a lot of play time as of late, or really the entire year, and has been killing it in the G League, like I just alluded to. And with Jeremy out, with Keldon out, we're kind of missing that size at the wing position anyway because of those injuries and the just shutting it down factor. So yeah, I think that he kind of fills that void, and we would get to see kind of what he's made of next to Victor Wembanyama. I don't think he's going to start, but coming off the bench with Mamu getting elevated minutes likely, that's definitely somebody that I would be looking out to see. And Dominic Barlow is also out, so that opens up another hole for someone else to possibly get some minutes. And I would be remiss if I did not mention our guys in the G League like Mr. Booyah, as well as David Duke Jr., who have been going off as of late. Jude knows more of those specifics, but I know David Duke Jr. is an absolute scorching scoring machine right now in the G League. So maybe him getting some minutes because of Devin Vassell being shut down. Personally, I would like to see him a little bit more than maybe I'd like to see Devonte Graham. But I still like Devonte Graham. He's a veteran. He's probably going to get meaningful minutes as well. We've seen him the past couple of nights, even with Devin playing. So that's probably the direction they'll go. But you also have to take into account Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham probably getting more minutes as well. So I think we'll see a multitude of lineups in these last couple of games, just like we saw last year. Like, who really thought that Mamukelashvili and Julian Champagny and Charles Bassey and Dominic Barlow would have gotten meaningful minutes last season? But they did. So I would go out on a limb, not to overuse that turn of phrase, but CD Sissoko, maybe David Duke Jr., Booyah, those guys in the G League getting more minutes is maybe that's in the cards, if you will. Let's see. Two clutch Corey. Sorry, that is a tongue twister. Gonna be a tough outing. This, yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Two clutch. There is always the silver lining, the sliver of hope that Mr. Jokic and Murray do not play tonight. If they don't play, Victor could possibly single-handedly win this game, but I would still say that is very unlikely. Alejandro Morales says he would rather have Mr. Darius Garland than Trae Young, assuming he's talking about this offseason if one of those guys were to be available. I like both guys, to be completely honest with you. I think Darius Garland and Trae Young provide very different play styles. They're both talented playmakers. I would put Trae Young as a better playmaker. I would put Trae Young as maybe a better shooter, but Garland's maybe a more complete player. He's got a little bit more size and physicality, better at attacking the rim, slightly better defender. I think it's more of a matter of taste, and then also the factor that no one ever thinks about is who's available and what do these teams want for them. The more I think about it, the more I think it's less likely that any of these bigger names like a Garland, like a Young, are actually going to make their way to San Antonio this offseason. I think maybe that's a couple years away. But I do think there might be some interesting moves, smaller moves for some veteran players that can come in and maybe make an immediate impact as far as developing the other guys that we could see this offseason. Free agency moves. Nothing crazy, nothing world breaking. I still don't think that the Spurs are going to be playoff teams next year. But I do think it is in the cards for the Spurs. Again, not to overuse a phrase, I used that already, but it's in the cards for the Spurs to make a couple key moves in free agency to bring some veteran talent that can assist in just some of these silly mistakes that we're making offensively and defensively, fill the gaps, and accelerate the natural development of our other young players without losing any of our young players. I think that there's like a fine line there, because I know there's two schools of thought, right? Develop the young talent that we have, continue in the process, draft, and don't make any other moves, or trade everybody, trade our assets, go for a big name like a Young, like a Garland, whoever. And I think that there's a middle ground where we bring in some veteran players that are on pretty affordable contracts that are just looking to play with Wemby and help our team grow. And I think that's probably the direction we're going to go in the immediate future. But just to answer this question, Garland versus Young, I think I'd go Young. And I know that's probably not a popular pick, but I just think that his play style would fit better next to Victor Wembanyama. And I also think he gets kind of a really bad rap. And if you watch his games, he's a lot better and a lot more impactful than people are giving him credit for. Not to take anything away from Garland, it's a matter of taste. Again, no wrong choice. But personally, I would take Young. Okay. Appreciate it, Alejandro. Let's see who else is in here. Nick said just a mistake. I appreciate that. He said he would never disrespect the legend. I appreciate that as well. Ethan Quintero is what he meant to call me. I appreciate that. Let's see. Two clutch Corey. Let's hope Malone is kind to us and sits the big fella at least. That would definitely help. But Jamal Murray has had nights against the Spurs where he feels like the number one option for Denver. So I think if either of them play, it might be wraps for the Spurs. Man, I think last time I did a solo, my throat started to hurt like this. I think it's something about the way I'm talking is a little different. So I apologize for everybody that's having to listen to this on excuse me, on podcast platform. I am coughing and scratching like a maniac. So give me one moment. Good Lord. For those of you that are withstanding this nonsense, I appreciate it. It's difficult to talk for 15 to 30 minutes by yourself and just word vomit into a microphone, especially when you're quote unquote using your performing voice. So it means a lot that the 15 of you in here are withstanding. Let's move on. Robert Ball says, who should the Spurs take in the draft? We touched on this, I think, 2 or 3 podcasts ago, Robert. Just some of the bigger names. I personally don't want to talk about it too much, only because I haven't done enough research on any of the the big names that are available. I know, was it Rechacher, the French guard slash forward, is a pretty talented dude at like 6'7", 6'8", and even that might be wrong. I can't really remember. But a lot of people have him at number one. A lot of people think that we should just take Topic. I know there's the Alexander Sarr. I think just based on the limited information I have, Rechacher's the guy that I would go with. But definitely be on the lookout. We will be dropping more draft related content as the season winds down and as we both do a little bit more diving into those players. I think Jude also has a video out there, if you go back and look, that's just him reacting to some of these guys' highlight reels. That was a solo episode for him. So please go check that out if you're interested. But give me a couple weeks before I answer this question because I don't want to give you an uneducated answer. Victor Wembanyama says he would go Garland over Young because he plays defense. He also thinks that Garland would be cheaper assets wise in a trade. You're probably right. I think we could maybe finesse a Young deal that's a little bit cheaper only because we own their draft picks. If there was some way that they would take their draft pick back, I'm talking about Atlanta, without us having to give up a lot of young talent, then I think we might be able to finesse them because that's really the only way I think they would give up Trae Young. Because if they trade Trae Young, their team's going to completely plummet. But if they don't have their picks, then what's the point? Might as well be mediocre because they don't have their draft pick type deal. So if they can get their pick back, they might be more willing to accept a trade, and then we don't have to include, say, a Keldon or a Malachi or whoever. So, or multiple draft picks. That's the only scenario in which I can see Young being quote unquote cheaper than Garland. Holy hell. That is the Spurs dog, and I apologize for everyone listening. He is going crazy. One moment while I mute myself and scream at him. Thank you. Anyway, let's move on. Alejandro says, small change, but Clay, I'm assuming says Thompson, for Keldon. Veteran and reliable shooter, and the dude that looks like J. Cole from the 76ers. I don't know who J. Cole is. I know who J. Cole is. I don't know who the player he's referring to is. So if you can put his name in the comments, maybe I can answer the question. But Clay for Keldon, it's different. I think, isn't Clay an unrestricted free agent moving into this offseason? He's a name that I wouldn't mind going after. I don't know if he wants to leave Golden State, but if Golden State ends up dropping out of the play-in tournament and they don't want to give Clay his money because he's had a off season for Clay Thompson, he's a name I wouldn't mind trying to acquire on a veteran on an affordable deal because we're going to have to spend some of this money eventually, and he's someone we can probably get on a low deal because of how dismal his year was. And you're right, next to a Victor Wembanyama, he's going to get a lot of space. The only question there would be, do you move Devin Vassell to small forward or Klay Thompson to small forward? Because you would want to start him because he is a reliable shooter. He can space the floor for us, kind of play the Doug McDermott role, but in the starting lineup, and just obviously way better than Doug McDermott because he's Klay Thompson. So I don't hate it, but I think we can possibly get him without having to trade Keldon Johnson at all. But we'll see. Robert Ball, you're running solo great. I appreciate that, Robert Ball. I feel like I've said appreciate that a lot tonight, but I appreciate that no one's going to call me out on it. At least not in the live. Maybe later. Victor Wembanyama says, I would rather trade Keldon for Alex Caruso before Keldon for Thompson. I don't know Alex Caruso's contract situation, but he's another name that would be a perfect example of like a veteran type player that can come in and give us a competitive edge and fill a need, but without being a blockbuster deal. right? Like this is an example of what could happen this offseason without giving up a lot of assets. I don't see I don't see the appeal in from Chicago's perspective. No disrespect to Keldon, but if you're going to trade Alex Caruso, like Alex Caruso is not the reason your team's mediocre, right? You would want to trade DeMar, Vucevic, Zach LaVine. Like trading Alex Caruso really doesn't do anything for you, um, unless you're blowing up the rest of the team. And then if you're just getting Keldon Johnson back, I don't see why they would pull that trigger. To be completely honest, because Keldon can score. He's not a world class defender. He's not a world class playmaker. He doesn't do a lot of the things that Alex Caruso does. So why would they want another scorer when they have three prolific scorers in DeMar, Vucevic, and Zach LaVine? Unless you think that they're just going to trade everybody and they're trying to tank and Keldon's going to be their number one option. Maybe. But they'd probably still want draft capital from them. And Alex Caruso is a type of player that can help a team win right now. So I don't know if he would necessarily want to come to the Spurs. But I would love to have him. Absolutely. Doria the Exploria says, my only gripe with T. Young is that I'm not sure he can play off the ball when Wemby has the ball. It's interesting because I think he's capable. We've just never seen him have to do it. Because Trae Young's never played with a guy that needs the ball. He's only played with players that can play off of him. The only other player that needs the ball is DeJounte Murray. Obviously, that hasn't worked. But they're both guards. So when DeJounte has the ball, he's on the perimeter. Trae Young's also on the perimeter. So it's a different story. Victor plays on the perimeter, sure, but he's a low block player. He's going to play in the pick and roll with Trae. I don't know. I just think it's two completely different setups. Like, name a player that Trae Young needs to give the ball to and let him go to work. DeJounte. Otherwise, who? John Collins? No. Bogey? No. Clint Capella? No. Clint Capella? No. Jalen Johnson? No. Like, he's really had to be, by necessity, the entire offense for that team. And I love DeJounte. He was great for us, but Trae Young's better with the ball in his hands. Just a fact. DeJounte's a way better defender. Probably a better mid-range shooter just because he's taller and has that in his game. But everywhere else, I'd rather Trae Young have the ball. So put Trae Young next to Devin Vassell, who can also play off the ball, and Victor Wembanyama, who can be a low block scorer. He can play at the high post. He can isolate at the top of the key. I think he could. I think it would make it a lot easier on Trae Young. I don't think that's the problem. I think Trae Young's only gripe is defense. And I mean, that's really it. Defense and the fact that he's small. And we've really never seen that many. We haven't seen a lot of small guards win. We've seen Steph win, but Steph's 6'3", Trae Young's 6 foot, maybe. And we've seen Isaiah Thomas win. He's 6'1", 6 foot. Other than that, we really haven't seen it. But we've also never seen that little guy, next to someone as great as Victor Wembanyama. So I don't see that being a problem, personally. Victor says, definitely has a problem off ball with Murray running the offense. Yeah, but again, different situation. Murray's at the top of the key running pick and roll, pulling up from mid-range. Victor's not. And I really don't think he'd have to play off the ball all that much. Like, Victor can, yeah, sure, you're going to give the Victor the ball. But when he's getting the ball, he's not getting it. Here's how I think of this. As Trae Young's bringing the ball up the court 65, 70% of the time for the Spurs, the action's going to be pick and roll with Wemby or throw the ball down to Wemby. And if it's pick and roll with Wemby, he can isolate and score step back three, or he can feed Wemby rolling to the basket or popping. Or if he's throwing it down to Wemby, then it's a different deal because DeJounte is not getting the ball on the block. DeJounte's getting the ball on the top of the key. So I think it's a different off ball. I understand what you're saying. It hasn't worked for them, but I don't think DeJounte and Trey. I don't think Trey having to play off ball is the reason that the Hawks aren't good. I think the Hawks aren't good because the Hawks aren't good, and their team's not built around Trey Young's skill set. And to an extent, yes, I think that they have enabled him to play a style that is not winning. But I don't think that transitions to the Spurs. That's not who Pop is. That's not who the team is. But all this being said, I still don't think it's likely that we trade for him or Darius Garland. Millennial Media says, sounds like Kong. I don't know what this is referring to, but thank you. Alejandro says, Tobias. Oh, is this who you were, the J. Cole lookalike? Okay, Tobias Harris. So you're saying Keldon for Tobias Harris? I would say no. Personally, I think if we trade Keldon Johnson, we try and get someone. If we trade Keldon Johnson, I would want it to be a package to acquire a better player than Tobias Harris. I think Tobias Harris is good, but he's the third option right now on a Sixers team that's having a tough time getting to the finals. And he would be our second option, third option, and we're nowhere near where the Sixers are right now. And he's older. He's kind of later in his prime. If I had a choice between Tobias Harris, if you're telling me my choices are Keldon for Klay Thompson or Keldon for Tobias Harris, I would choose Klay Thompson. But I think Klay Thompson, we might have a shot at getting in the offseason without having to trade Keldon. And I don't think, again, the Sixers, I don't think where they are, they want Keldon for Tobias. I don't think that's a move they make. I think what Keldon would provide them is what Kelly Oubre is providing them right now. Robert Ball, Caruso would be a great fit. Agreed. Chicago could get Keldon and their protected pick back. So we'd give up Keldon and a pick to get Caruso. That's a tough decision. That's a really tough decision. So assuming Caruso's coming off the bench, I guess as the backup point guard. So it would be Caruso, Malachi, somebody. I don't know. It's a tough choice. The emotional side of me wants to say no, only because I love Keldon Johnson so much. I don't know. I don't even know. It's worth a discussion. I'm going to do some more research and I'm going to get back to you. Ask the same question next live. Because I think I deserve it. It's a good enough question that it deserves enough attention, more attention from me and Jude. So bring it up next time. Let's see. Two Clutch Corey. I think Young is wise enough to understand the situation and do what's necessary to win. I agree. And I think he's done that in the past. I think it's just a different situation now, and the team is kind of built in a different direction since he got to the Eastern Conference Finals, which is sad. Let's see. Peter, after March Madness, who you going to pick at 3 if Spurs hold that spot? Peter, I talked about the draft earlier in the episode. I'd like to give it a little more research and time before I give you my exact analysis. Just surface level, I think Recherche's the guy that I would want, or Recherche, whatever, however you say his name. He's the French guy. But I think he's slotted at for some people at 1 and as low as like 4 or 5. So give us a little bit more time to look into it. We're going to have a lot of draft content once the season ends, because once the season's over, that's pretty much all there is to talk about is draft and then free agency. So all of that will be coming. But I think Jude also made a video breaking down some of their highlights, some of the top picks highlights. So go check that out in our earlier videos if you want to see that right now. But just surface level, that's kind of the guy I'm looking at. And then, of course, the other names that are everyone else is saying Topic, Alexander Sarr, Vizelis, whoever else. But we need to do a little bit. I need to do more research before I can give you an answer. Let's see. Victor Wembanyama says Tony Parker at 6'4", but with Duncan. I would even say Tony's shorter than that. Maybe you know more than I do. I always thought he was like 6'2". But yeah, but with Duncan, that's the thing. I think you're talking about what I said about Trae Young, and I guess this would also work for Darius Garland. Like alone, we've never seen a small guard win, but when you pair them with a Tim Duncan, great things happen. And then it even transcends greatness once you get Manu Ginobili off the bench and surround them with quality players. Vic Dub 69. What current Spurs have you been most and least impressed by this year? Ooh. Spicy question, Mr. Vic. Most impressed with Victor Wembanyama. I mean, is that a cop out to say? I mean, the guy's been otherworldly, and the improvements that he's been able to make from game one to now is pretty incredible. I mean, Brian Windhorst, not to keep talking about the Hoop Collective podcast, it's a different thing, but he talked about, or those guys over there talked about what he's been able to improve on from game one to now is greater than what some guys are able to improve on in a whole off season or even like a full 4 or 5 seasons. But he's been able to do it during an active season, which is unbelievable, and switching positions from power forward to center. And I know the record hasn't evolved that much. I mean, recently we've won a couple games, but even still, we're a top 3 bad team in the league or a bottom 3 team in the league. But for him to play 66 games thus far, average 21, 10.5, 4 assists, 3 blocks, had more blocks than the last, 3 defensive player of the years combined. A runner for defensive player of the year as a rookie. By far and away the best player on this team. And playing so well that ESPN and other media outlets are talking about how we need to trade everybody else on the team and acquire LeBron James and Anthony Davis because we need to compete right now because he's ready. I mean, I don't think I need to say anymore. We've beaten it like a dead horse already. He is everything that was advertised. But additionally, Devin Vassell, I think, has been fantastic this season. It took a second for him to catch on as well. And he didn't have a terrible first half of the year, but the second half of the year for him has been incredible. I don't have the stats in front of me. You know what? Let me look. Let me see what Devin Vassell's post All-Star break stats have been. Let's see here. One moment, please. How do I look at this? I know how to look at this. Gosh darn it. Okay, well, let's see. In February, he only averaged 18.5 a game, but in March, he averaged 22 points per game, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, on 43% from 3, 49% from the field. That's pretty darn good. And how old is he now? 23 years old, and he'll be 24 in August. And for the season, he's averaging 19 a game, 4 assists, 4 boards on 47% shooting. And I think what's most impressed me has been the improved chemistry with Victor Wembanyama, especially in the pick and roll. At the beginning of the year, we were knocking everybody and their mother for not passing it to Victor Wembanyama, for having no chemistry, for being lackadaisical. He has done everything in his power to flip that narrative. And he's throwing lobs to Wemby. He's running pick and rolls with him. He's being the role man for Wemby. And I think he's been the most dependable player next to Wemby this year. But I think the best part of this question is, who have you been least impressed by? Let me look at the full roster real quick. Let me see. Man, I hate to say it. But I have to say Zach Collins and Malachi Branham. Zach's drop off from last year to this year, I guess statistically hasn't been that crazy, but I think for him to finish the year post Jakob trade last year, averaging 17 and 9 on 50+% shooting, to now averaging 11 and 5 rebounds on the year and shooting dismally from 3, when that's really one of the biggest reasons we acquired him, is because he could space the floor. It's been an astronomical drop off, and I feel bad for him because I know he's not without his deficiencies, and not everything is his fault. It's just physicality. It's just the frame that he plays with and whatnot. But I still expected him to be a lot better than he's been, and I have no excuses for why he hasn't been that, because we've seen him at his peak and it's been fantastic. Um, but this season's been rough for him. And Malachi Branham, what did he average last year? Because right now he's averaging 9 points a game, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists on 42.8% shooting from the field. Last year he averaged, let's see, one moment. Don't want to get this wrong. Yeah, last year he averaged 10 points a game, almost 3 rebounds, and 2 assists again. On what was it? 44% shooting. So he's scoring less on worse efficiency with one less rebound a game. Um, I guess he's shooting 3% better from three on equal attempts, pretty much, but or on pace attempts. I just think that we all expected a bigger jump from him, and I know there's the technical sophomore slump that everyone talks about, but with how we spoke about off seasons, or how the players were speaking about off seasons last off season, and their specific question was who had the best off season, who are you most excited to see this year, and everybody pretty much universally said Malachi Branham. And I thought he was going to have a great year, averaging, I think I might have guessed, I think I might have said 14 to 15 points a game for some of our preseason predictions. And for him to only be averaging 8.8 on pretty inefficient shooting, that's been disappointing. I'm still not giving up on Malachi Branham. I still think he's got a lot of upside. He's got a lot of scoring potential, especially as a 3-level scorer, because he gets to his spots well. Um, he moves well without the ball. He can get hot, and we've seen him go crazy this season. He had like a 5-game stretch like a few weeks ago where he averaged, what was it, like close to 20 points a game, it seemed like, and then he immediately dropped back off. I can pull up his game log and give you specifics. So I guess he's had a pretty decent stretch the last 3 games. In Utah, he had 17. In New York, he had 10. And then Golden State, he had 12. But before that, he had, okay, you know what? Let's go back to Golden State on 3-11. And I'm going to just say the point totals he had moving forward. He had 2 points, 4 points, 2 points, 7 points, 11 points, 4 points, 7 points, 0 points. That's pretty rough. That's a rough stretch. But before that stretch, he had 18, 20, 23, and 20. So it's an inconsistency thing for me. And I just honestly thought he would have a better year. So those are the least impressed guys. Malachi and Zach. Zach, I understand. Malachi, I really don't. I wish he had a better year. Let's see. Victor Wembanyama asks, here is a name not named a lot, since OKC can't pay everyone, either one or the other, Cason Wallace or Josh Giddey. I don't know. I really don't know, because I think we talked about Josh Giddey 2 episodes ago, and Jude asked a good question. What does Josh Giddey do that Trey Jones doesn't? And other than being taller, and maybe, obviously more potential, but this year's been rough for him. He's not a shooter. He's not a great scorer. He benefits a lot from being 6'7", 6'8", and just being a little bit better of an athlete than Trey Jones. But I think as far as facilitating, he's about the same. Maybe a little bit flashier than Trey Jones, but that's it. Cason Wallace I like a lot. He's a great defender. Not a great shooter either, though. Maybe more upside than Trey Jones. But I like both of these guys. It would just come down to what do they want. Because I don't really want to trade that much for either of these guys. Because you can make an argument in your next comment. My most impressed this season has been Blake Wesley. You can make an argument that Blake Wesley is kind of what Cason Wallace is, just a little bit younger. Or are they the same age? They might even be the same age. I don't know. No. Blake's actually a year older. I don't know. I think Blake's a year older. Either way, Blake's best best skill set is his defense. So is Case and Wallace's. Neither of them are great shooters right now. I think Case and Wallace went crazy on us in one game, so maybe we all have a little bit of a bad taste in our mouth because of that. Um, but my recommendation would be to stay pat on moving for those two guys because they're both young. We would have to give up our young talent and an asset, probably a draft asset. So I don't leap at the opportunity, but it would all come down to what we're expected to give up. Let's see, Alejandro. I just want to get rid of Julian. He's doing cardio out there. I saw him while I was at the Apple store. We made eye contact, and I didn't even want his autograph. Literally anyone else I would ask. There's a lot of animosity there between you and old Julian Champagny. Look, he's not great. I don't think he's awful. Julian is literally 2012 Danny Green. And I know everyone thinks Danny Green, they think what he did in the 2013 finals and the 2014 playoffs, and then what he was able to provide us as a role player moving forward. But if you go back to when we first acquired him, when he was back and forth with the Austin Toros at the time in the D League, um, he was an inconsistent 3-and-D guy, kind of like Julian, who didn't have a lot of potential, kind of bounced around the league a little bit, and kind of an older young player, if that makes sense. I think Julian right now is just kind of filling a hole. And would I rather have somebody else there? Sure. That's why I think in the draft, if there's a guy that can play the 3 spot that's a higher upside than Julian, that's who we should draft. Only because the biggest hole in that starting lineup is Julian Champagny. Um, no disrespect to him, but when you look at Trey, Devin, him, Jeremy, Wemby, who's the worst player? Julian. And he's actually not that playing that many minutes because Keldon kind of replaces him pretty quickly coming off the bench. But if we can find someone a little bit more capable with a little more upside, I'm all for it. But I think this is literally what we expected out of Julian, was just every once in a while having a pretty decent game from 3 and giving it his all on defense and playing physically and just not making mistakes. I understand what you're saying. He is running a lot with very little stats in the stat sheet. Um, but that's kind of who he is right now. And they give him another year. Next year, he's probably a little bit better. I know that's looking at it optimistically, but at the end of the day, I don't disagree with you. We need to improve at that spot. But I'm not mad at Julian Champagny because I think he was kind of put in a spot that the lights were a little bit bright for him, but he hasn't backed off. He's just not been great, if that makes sense. Nick confirms my suspicions. Tony Parker was not 6'4". I didn't think so. Let's see. Oh, Vic Dub actually had the first comment. Rizache, I believe is how it's pronounced. Rizache. Rizache. Okay. That's who I would like to draft right now without doing any research. Let's see. Martin Murray says Tony Parker was listed at 6'4". Are we sure? I don't want to be this guy, but I'm going to fact check everybody. No, he's 6'2". He is 6'2". That's Wikipedia. Let me go to a basketball reference. 6'2". NBA.com. 6'2". He's 6'2". There we go. We confirmed it. Victor Wembanyama agrees with me. Least impressive has been Zach. Brick can't grab rebounds. Collins. That's very mean, but I understand. Let's see. Martian Murray again. The Spurs winning the season series against the Suns impressed me. Yeah. Those first couple of games were a little bit of an out of the ordinary thing because we won the first one because of Keldon Johnson ripping the ball out of Kevin Durant's hands and getting the winning shot. And then that second one, we just blew him out. Third game we lost, and then the fourth game we won. But I'm just happy we won one season series this season. So definitely happy with that. Yeah, Nick, I agree. They were pretty hype, especially that first one with Keldon winning it single-handedly with the tearaway. That was unbelievable. Yeah, look, there you go. You agree with me. Thank you, sir. Martian Murray also agrees with me. I would like to upgrade the 3 first before the point guard spot. I agree. I think if we upgrade it, the small forward, at least starting small forward, and are able to leave Keldon coming in off the bench, Um, that helps in a lot of different avenues. Rubber ball. Julian's on a very friendly team contract, and Julian plays better defense and rebounds better than Danny Green. Hot take, but I don't disagree. Defense. I'm not sold on him being a better defender than Danny because Danny was an All NBA defender for a couple years in San Antonio, but rebounds, sure, and that comes from him being 6'9", and I think he has the potential to be an All NBA defender like a Danny Green. I just think he's maybe a year or two away from reaching that point. Let's see. Victor Wembanyama. I went to the Spurs versus Suns game in which Jeremy Sohan hit the game winner. In the middle of the second quarter, Trey Jones had 2 rebounds. Zach Collins had 0 rebounds. Yeah, I have no defense. I have no defense for Zach Collins' play, especially when it comes to being a big and just playing big. Um, it's difficult, but it's the hand we've been dealt, and I think we've all gotten used to that fact. Um, he will be on the roster next year. He will be, but he's probably a candidate for a trade deadline move next season. Unless he has an immaculate comeback. I'm knocking on wood and hoping because I really did think when we signed him, like, this is a great move long term because he's a quality backup center at his best. And he was that for some time for Jakob. And when he elevated the starting center spot, he was that for a small stretch. And now he's hit his bottom. So fingers crossed for him. I never want his career to completely fall apart, but um, it's not looking good. He needs to have a great offseason and an even better season next year. Peter asks why Mamu doesn't play a lot. I think he is good pair with Wemby. When he plays, he's good. I don't have an answer for you as to why he doesn't play that much. I think it's just a seniority thing. We're gonna play Jeremy over him for sure because he's our lottery pick and he's a quality player, and we're gonna play. We dug before he got traded and Chetty because they're veterans. Um, I think we'll probably see him this last stretch a lot because he played well the last couple of games when he got meaningful minutes. And then Jude has a theory, or I don't know if it's Jude's theory or if it's just someone I saw in the comments has a theory that we're tanking by not playing him because he's actually good enough to help us win games. So I don't have an answer for you. It's just, Pop likes his lineups. He doesn't change a lot. And that's just kind of the hand that Mamu was dealt early. So, good point, Muhammad. Now, this Denver game is going to be an audition to see who's worthy of keeping next year. Let's let that marinate while I take a drink of water. Well said, sir. That's basically what last year was, right? For Julian and Mamu and Bassi was an audition, and they all got roster spots this year. So you're right. Let's see who's worthy of being kept. I think Dom's out tonight, but hopefully he comes back for the remainder of the year because he also deserves some meaningful play time. Zach's downfall after that contract, says Peter. Again, can't argue with you. Victor says, I'm praying they buy him out in the offseason. I don't know. I guess it's a possibility. It depends on who we bring in free agency, I guess. Or what we think Bassi is capable of. Because we always forget Charles Bassi's injured right now. And before he got injured, he was averaging, I don't even know how much he was averaging. Let's see. Only 3 points and 4 rebounds. But he's a guy that we gave a 4-year contract to that we obviously expected a lot out of. And whose season was derailed after that injury. So I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the full rules of the whole buyout situation. I don't know what happens when we buy somebody out who has a full contract guaranteed, or is it guaranteed? Let me do some more research on Zach Collins' contract, and then we'll talk about possibly buying him out in the offseason. All right. Alejandro says Maxi, Drew Holiday, OG, and PG-13 are big free agents this upcoming offseason. I would love PG-13. I think he's a great fit at that small forward spot. His natural spot. I think the Clippers have been playing him at the 2 a lot, which is which is fine. He's a bigger 2. He's 6'8", but I think him next to Trey Jones, Devin Vassell, Paul George, Jeremy Sohan, and Victor Wembanyama is a pretty crazy offensive lineup and defensive lineup. And I know that's a big name, but he's also getting slightly up there in age. So he would kind of fit into that already made his money, veteran type player who's looking to get in with Wemby. And see, I don't know. Knock on wood. If he wins a championship, I think it's honestly more likely because of how difficult things have been for him with the Clippers. I think he'll never talk about it, but I don't. I can't imagine anyone being happy with how everything's turned out with the Clippers because of Kawhi and his injuries and the coaches being fired and whatnot. And like Alejandro just said in the comments, talks have stopped negotiating between PG and the Clippers. And Paul George put back when he wanted out of Indiana back in the day, one of his destinations that he wanted to play at was San Antonio. I know it was a completely different situation back in 2016. We had LaMarcus and Timmy and Kawhi and the whole nine, so completely different situation. But he respects Pop. He's a Spur type player that plays well with or without the ball. And he shores up that 3 spot and gives us a little bit of star power. So that's the guy I like. And then Victor, he says he likes Drew Holiday. I like Drew Holiday too. The thing with Drew Holiday though is I guess he replaced Trey, let Trey come in off the bench. I'm not mad at that either. I can't be mad at that either. So if we can get him on a pretty same situation, kind of a contract friendly deal, I would absolutely love to bring Drew Holiday in. Martian says OG's the youngest, so that's who he would pick out of those names. I don't disagree with OG Anunoby either, but I think he's going to stay with the Knicks. I don't think the Knicks make that trade unless they know for sure that he's staying with them. Let's see, Muhammad. Which blueprint do you think the Spurs will emulate? Size plus defense, Orlando and Houston, or shoot and Swift, OKC, Indiana? Um, that's a great question. I think the Spurs are different. And that's not me looking through Spurs colored glasses. I think that they just play differently. I think they have the defense part as their core franchise identity. And I know our defense has been pretty poor this year, especially with Wemby off the court. But that's what Pop has historically built his teams around, is defense first. However, Victor is also a very slim center. So I could see where we would go with the more swift pace, push the court or push the pace style of offense that we see with Indiana and OKC. But where they're different is they have really talented fast paced guards. So, which we don't have yet. We have Devin, but he's not a fast paced guard in the same sense that Tyrese Halliburton and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander are. So I think it's honestly going to be a mix, at least for right now. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd pick Shoot and Swift. But it's hard to say with where our team currently is. Because I think in 3 to 4 years, it's going to look completely different than it does right now. What would you give up if Tyrese Halliburton was available? Asks Victor Wembanyama. I don't think he's going to be available anytime soon, but I would give up a lot. I'd give up everything except for Devin and Vic and Jeremy, probably. So I'd throw every pick I had, probably. I'd probably throw Malachi and Blake and Keldon and whoever else I had to throw in there to make the contract work. But again, I don't think he's going to be available. Any chance, Peter asks, any chance Wemby plays at small forward and Sohan power forward / center if we draft him, another big man? I would say no. I would say no. I would say no. Well, maybe I I would say this is more likely, what you just said. Or play him at center and draft a wing to complement Wemby. I would say this is more likely. But I would say by the end of his career, we will see Wemby play pretty much every position on the court, for sure. Eric Pacina says, we need a power forward, no, a monster power forward to play alongside Wemby, Sohan, and Vassell. Where does that put Sohan? At small forward? I mean, okay. We could try it. I mean, we played him at point guard, so I mean, I'm not against playing him as small forward. Why not? Let's throw everything against the wall. Um, Doria, this is gonna be the last comment because my throat's actually killing me, and we're slowly approaching game time here. But with the glimpses of passing and vision Wemby has shown, I think pseudo Nugget style would be cool. Yeah, I could see Nugget style. I think that that's more likely than the swift play of Indiana or the grit and grind style of Orlando or Houston. Um, I would say Denver, but with how Victor Wembanyama's been playing and with his skill set, I think Victor is going to implement a style that we've never seen before. And that's not me looking through Spurs colored lenses. I think that's universally what everyone thinks that watches the NBA. He is so different. He is so talented already at his age that he will change how we think of the game. He will impact in the same way that Kareem impacted when he was drafted, how Wilt impacted when he was drafted, how Michael changed the game, and how LeBron changed the game, knocking on wood for his health and the fact, and hopefully that he stays with San Antonio for his whole career. But he is a different player that we've never seen before. So down the road, our style will be question mark, depending on which direction Victor Wembanyama takes us. That is going to be my final answer. And just to put it up here, because I do like to see this kind of thing, it will all stem back to what Alejandro is alluding to. Mark my words, the same way Pop revolutionized, popularized small ball, 14 beautiful game, he will do the same because of Victor Wembanyama. It all comes back to Coach Pop, the Spurs, and the beautiful game. Couldn't have said it better myself. Alejandro Morales, thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. This was a long episode. My throat was scratchy. I coughed. My dog barked. I was drinking water. I was doing long pauses. I was thinking heavily. You were all in the comments. I appreciate it. Long story short, I'm going to say Spurs L against Denver tonight in Denver. Um, However, we're going to see some minutes from guys that we wouldn't ordinarily see, like Sita Sissoko, whose birthday it is. And Nick, thank you for being in here. I appreciate it as well. As always, like and subscribe. Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry, I don't do this often. Don't forget to like and subscribe to a SSPN below. We will be back soon with more post-game coverages, hopefully with Jude and myself, because we like to do it together. Solo's fun, but it's always better when you have a partner in crime. And where does Jude keep all this stuff, man? Here we go. Check out our merch. Scan the QR code. The link is below. It's also in our channel on one of our ribbons. I think it's called Shop or Store. You can buy one of these cool hats. We got some cool sweatshirts. We got some cool T-shirts because it's going to be summertime soon, and who wants a sweatshirt? But yeah, thank you for being here. As always, go Spurs, go.